3 spine-chilling true Blackout horror stories. Discover the sinister secrets exposed in darkness. Emily tightened her grip on her phone, the light flickering like a weak heartbeat as her heart raced. The power was out, darkness swallowing her suburban neighborhood whole. A sudden, deafening silence enveloped her, a precursor to terror. She had 2 kids. Where were they? Her backyard was nothing but shadows now, shadows that twisted and writhed, stretching toward her, lurking with malice. Panic clenched her throat as she stepped outside, stepping tentatively onto damp grass that suddenly felt foreign beneath her feet. Kids! She called, her voice trembling, swallowed whole by the night. The wind howled in response, chilling her to the bone. Distant, unnerving sounds echoed around her, an unsettling howl that fell into an eerie silence, shattered glass ringing out, and whispers floating through the darkness, hauntingly calling her name. Emily. She bit her lip, trying to brush past the anxious memories of her childhood, stories of missing children whispered among friends. A figure lurking in the shadows, always watching, always waiting. Just folklore, she told herself, anxiety coiling tighter in her gut as she ventured further, heart thumping against her ribs. Yet, the feeling of being hunted crept into her thoughts. Something or someone was watching her from the trees. A few blocks away, Marcus stood under an old flickering street lamp, chilly sweat on his brow. He had just clocked out from his shift at the diner, dreading the solitude that wrapped around him like a suffocating blanket. He felt eyes on him, scanning the silence for movement. A figure emerged from the alley, a familiar silhouette draped in a hoodie, stepping into the flickering light. Tremors of fear gripped him. It was someone from school, strange, distant. A shiver crept down his spine as the figure began to whisper secrets he thought were hidden. Each word sent a wave of dread crashing over him. They knew him intimately, every secret, every fear laid bare. Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. The wind picked up, rattling the leaves, mocking their quiet dread. Meanwhile, Emily was still searching for her children when an instinctual dread pulled her back toward the house. A child's scream echoed, sharp and cutting through the still air, paralyzing her with fear. The scream echoed like a siren in the night, off in the distance, jagged and broken. The Carson family, tucked away in their farmhouse, were equally gripped by fear, discovering a Dante approach vibe in their once friendly neighbor, Mr. Thompson. His charms had begun to feel sinister, especially as more locals stumbled upon folklore detailing dark figures that took children during blackouts. They found themselves unearthing tales of revenge and wrath while corresponding turns of events pulled them into a spiraling nightmare. Lost between the horrors of her past, the fearful presence surrounding her, and an uncertain future, Emily took a breath. She had to find her kids. The rustle in the bushes grew more pronounced, shadows breathing with her, something sinister lingered just beyond the periphery. There, creeping ever closer, traditional safety felt like an innocent delusion. She was chasing her heart as it raced, determined to protect her family from legends thought long forgotten. Darkness enveloped her, ready to embrace them all in its chilling grip. What waited for her beyond the shadows? The questions clawed at her insides as she sprinted back toward home. Emily burst through the back door, lunging into the darkened kitchen. The chill brought on by the night crept in, wrapping around her like icy fingers. Her phone flickered the last remnants of light before surrendering to the dark, leaving her alone with the insistent pounding of her heartbeat and the throbbing anxiety in her chest. "Mom!" A voice called from upstairs. Relief washed over her briefly as she raced toward the sound. "Where are you?" she shouted, her feet pounding against the creaky wood floor. At the foot of the stairs, she froze. There was something wrong in that voice. It held a quiver, a strained note that made her gut twist. She called again, voicing a false bravado she didn't feel. "Stay where you are. I'm coming." As she climbed the stairs, shadows clawed at her from the corners. The house moaned like a living entity, each creak resonating with terror. She reached the top and glimpsed a faint glow flickering from the bathroom. Emily had never run so fast in her life. She burst through the door, heart racing only to find it empty. The small window bled moonlight, illuminating the tiles and revealing nothing but a forgotten pair of pajamas. Panic surged again, the icy grip of fear tightening around her throat. "Where are you?" she whimpered, stepping back. The faint glow came from the tiny LED nightlight, its flicker a mockery of safety. Downstairs, she heard something soft, deliberate footsteps. Her breath hitched in her throat. Was it her children? She raced back down the stairs, her mind racing with what-ifs and dread. The atmosphere shifted, thickening. Emily had grown up in this house, but now it felt foreign, haunted by unseen forces. Every creak of the old structure felt malicious, like it teased her steps. Just as she reached the living room, the footsteps ceased. "Kids!" she yelled again, voice cracking. In response, only silence enveloped her. It felt suffocating, the weight of darkness pressing against her. She strained to listen, hoping for a sign, yet all that met her ears was the faint rustle of wind creeping through cracks in the window. Then, a whisper, urgent and chilling, sliced through the stillness. "Emily! Help us!" She whipped around, eyes wild. The voice was it one of her children? But where were they? The air felt charged, as if anticipating a storm. Suddenly, the front door creaked open, seemingly of its own volition. Shadows poured in like a dark tide, swallowing the light. Emily's heart slammed against her ribs as she stepped forward, a primal instinct urging her closer. "Mommy!" A plaintive cry echoed from beyond the door. She hesitated, indecision gripping her. The sound was almost lost in the chaos of the wind, anxiety wrapping her tighter. But if it was them, if they were outside, she had to go. With a shuddering breath, she stepped onto the porch, the coolness biting at her skin. "Where are you?" she yelled into the abyss. The silence that followed felt sinister, and the shadows seemed to recoil, mocking her very existence. Before she could retreat, something lunged from the trees, a shape, dark and grotesque. It wasn't human. With a scream threatening to escape her throat, Emily turned, dashing back to the door only to feel an icy hand grip her ankle, bringing her to the ground. As she struggled, another voice joined the chaos, boys laughing, taunting, echoing her children's tones but twisted, wrong. "Now you're part of the game, Emily." Just as everything spiraled, a flash of light approached. Headlights from a car burst through the night, illuminating everything. But what had it revealed? She looked back, breathless and terrified. The shadows began to melt away, but did they take her children with them? What lay beyond the flickering light? The beam of light swept across the yard, cutting through the darkness with fierce intent. Emily squinted, praying it would reveal something, anything that would bring her children back. But what she saw sent her heart plummeting into her stomach. The car idled, lights glaring, but it was empty. No driver. No familiar faces. The shadows surrounding her surged like a living thing, intent on keeping whatever secrets they harbored. Panic began to claw at her throat. "No, no, no," she muttered under her breath. She turned back toward the house, scrambling to get inside. As she stumbled through the door and slammed it shut, the sound echoed hollowly inside the dark living room. The night seemed to press against the glass, oppressive and heavy. Her pulse thundered in her ears as she glanced at the darkened windows, each a nightmarish reflection of her trembling self. Had the shadows followed her inside? The whispers began again, a cacophony of voices, echoing off the walls, mingling with the wind. "Help us, Emily. We're here, don't leave us." They were soft at first, like the rustle of pages turning, but they crescendoed into a chorus of desperation. Was this real? Or just her mind twisting in fear? "Get away from me. She screamed, hands pressed against her ears as if that could block out the cries. With shaky breaths, she turned to where the stairs loomed, a gaping mouth toward the unknown. Every shadow seemed to pulse with life, a sinister heartbeat echoing with her own. Then, a movement caught her eye, something darting across the edge of the staircase. Emily's heart dropped, and she drew closer, hoping to catch a glimpse of her children, hoping to make sense of the horror. Instead, she was met by the smirk of a shadow-like figure, its features barely formed, but the malevolence clear in its stance. "Playtime is just beginning," it hissed, a voice that dripped like venom. Fear paralyzed her. She had to move, had to break free from this suffocating nightmare. Just as she turned back toward the living room, she was struck by another chilling realization: the whispers had stopped. The laughter that had taunted her now faded into nothingness, leaving an unsettling silence. Was this a reprieve? Or the calm before a worse storm? Bolting for the door, Emily hesitated. Outside had felt so wrong, but inside brought her no comfort either. What choice did she have? She had to find them. Her children weren't safe, and what was left of her sanity depended on her making a choice. Just as she reached for the handle, the lights flickered violently, casting whirling shadows that danced and twisted around her. The night outside was still silent, but the air inside felt thick, almost electric. Emily clenched her fists, a resolve building within her. She stepped back, taking a deep breath. "I want to let you take my family." Her voice rang out, bold against the silence. Yet, just as she said it, the floor shook violently beneath her feet, and the walls reverberated with a mocking laughter. A cackle that felt alive, crashing, echoed from above. A sharp cry, barely discernible but unmistakably her son's voice. "Mom!" Without another thought, she raced up the stairs, feet barely touching the ground. The air thickened around her, a noxious presence clawing at her mind. Was it the house's heart or something darker that wanted her to turn back? She reached the landing, throwing open the first door. Empty. The next, vacant too. Where were they? The desperation clawed at her throat now, transforming from fear into an unyielding rage. She had to find them. She had to confront whatever was keeping them from her. Emily burst into the third room, heart pounding against her ribs, only to find nothing but the reflection of herself, staring back with wide, terrified eyes. "Mom!" The voice echoed again, closer now. Was it real? "Mommy!" This time clearer, more urgent. It came from below the attic. Her breath lodged in her throat. What awaited her there? She gripped the banister, slowly descending the stairs again, the shadows swirling around her like storm clouds, each step darker. Then the last. What awaited her at the top of the house? Would she find her children or uncover a truth even darker than she feared? As she reached the attic door, it groaned under her hand. She hesitated, heart racing, breaths shallow. What lay behind that door held the power to either break her or reunite her with her family. What shadows lurked in the corners up there, just beyond the threshold? With trembling fingers, Emily pushed the attic door open, the creaking sound resonating like a funeral dirge. The stale air enveloped her, thick and unwelcoming. She stepped inside, heart racing, each beat echoing like a drum in her ears. The dim light barely illuminated the space, revealing dust-laden beams and boxes scattered like forgotten memories. The whispers returned, softer now, a haunting melody threading through the silence. "Mommy, help us!" The voice, her son's voice, sent shivers racing down her spine. She hesitated, the primal instinct to retreat gnawing at her. But fear of what lurked in the shadows was eclipsed by her fierce determination to find her children. "Where are you?" she called, her own voice a fragile thread in the oppressive gloom. A sudden movement caught her eye. A shadow darted past her, a fleeting glimpse of small figures, too quick to make out, vanishing among the old furnishings. Were they playing? Or were they trapped, ensnared in this tangled web of darkness? "Mom!" The voice again, richer now, more desperate, clamoring for her attention. Without a moment's thought, she bolted toward the sound, her feet pounding against the wooden floor, each step reverberating with urgency. Every corner seemed to close in, the very walls appearing to pulse with malevolence. "Mommy!" The call was frantic. She lunged to the far side of the attic, where the low-hanging beams met the slanted ceiling. A large box sat there, old and battered. It swayed slightly, an invisible force taunting her resolve. "Stay back!" she rasped, trying to steady her breath as an icy chill crept across her skin. She edged closer, every instinct screaming for her to turn around. The whispers escalated again, swirling violently around her, battling against her thoughts. "Help us please!" She reached for the box, hands shaking. What could it hold? The weight of her children's lives pressed against her chest, suffocating. Gripping the lid, she pulled it open with a sharp squeak that echoed like a scream. Inside were toys, tattered remnants of happier times, and beneath them, something darker, a frayed blanket stained with old, rust-colored marks. Frozen, her heart sank deeper. This isn't real. This can't be. She stumbled back, horror narrowing her vision. In that moment, the attic door slammed shut behind her, plunging the space into near darkness, the little light left flickering out. She felt the air shift, something moving among the shadows. Emily, a voice, her own name, now skeletal and hollow. The laughter returned, echoing around her. It was neither friendly nor mocking, a sinister invitation that sent chills coursing down her spine. "Let them go!" she shouted into the dark, fury igniting as she fought back against the terror wrapping around her like chains. The shadows coalesced, forming silhouettes that danced on the periphery, teasing her. "This is my house. My family." With newfound resolve, she swung her fists, trying to ward them off, but they surged toward her, a tide of malevolence. The throaty cackle intensified. "You want them? They're closer than you think." A sharp gasp escaped her as she stumbled backward, the box tipping over, toys scattering across the floor. But beneath the toys, something glimmered, a fragile locket, familiar and small. She recognized it instantly. Her daughter's mommy. The cry pierced through, sharper now. The attic was suffocating, spinning, the shadows closing in with a relentless hunger. Without thinking, she dove for the locket, clutching it tight. The moment she grasped it, the shadows receded, revealing the attic in sudden clarity. The walls no longer felt alive, just hauntingly ordinary. Save for the dark corners where the shadows hung, waiting. Then came another sound, a soft footstep, slow and deliberate, from behind her. The air chilled further, dread pooling at the base of her spine. Turning slowly, poised on the brink of terror and hope, she strained to see what awaited her in the darkness. What would she confront in those shadowy depths? Would she find her children, or face something far more horrific? A figure emerged from the shadows, tall and indistinct. It seemed to suck in the light around it, becoming a void within the attic's haunting ambience. Emily's heart raced, her breath quickened, and she instinctively clutched the locket to her chest as if it could shield her from whatever horror lingered behind her. "Mommy!" The voice was now more than an echo, it was a synthesis of many voices, twisting together in a haunting symphony. It grew closer, reverberating with a dissonance that twisted her stomach into knots. The shape took a step forward, not stepping out of the dark, but swimming against the very fabric of reality. "Who are you?" Emily shouted, anger cutting through the fear. What she saw was not human, yet it felt familiar. Not only did it share her children's cries, but its features were a warped distortion of their innocent faces. Panic surged through her, filling every crevice of her mind with dread. "You left us," the figure whispered, almost tenderly, as it reached out with elongated fingers that seemed to stretch endlessly into the darkness. "You could have saved us. Where are they?" she demanded, shaking her head as if that could erase the unwelcome memories clawing at her mind. The image of her children playing, laughing, faded with each passing moment, replaced by flickering remnants moving just beyond her reach. With a sudden lurch, a gust blew through the attic, swirling dust and debris, wrapping around her like threads of a web. The shadows twisted, forming claws that clawed at her ankles, pulling her back to a place she didn't want to go, to a past she couldn't escape. "Stop!" she screamed, staggering back in defiance, but the walls seemed to breathe, closing in on her. "I want to let you take them." The figure's face morphed into a grotesque version of her daughter's, eyes wide, begging. "Mommy, help us. Please." A flicker of light caught her eye, a glint from the scattered toys. She darted toward the pulsating light, awakening memories buried deep within. She had to fight, for more than herself. She reached for another toy, a small rag doll with a bright red dress, bathed in a warm glow that felt alive. In that moment, she felt the strength of her children's love emanating from it. "Stay away!" she shouted as she hurled the doll into the shadow, where the malevolent figure writhed, flashing hideous faces of children once full of joy, now twisted with despair. The creature shrieked, a sound that sent fissures of pain through her heart, like the very fabric of her reality tearing apart. The laughter shifted to sobs, and the shadows hesitated, recoiling as if injured. "You think you can save them?" "I know I can," Emily yelled, fueled by a raw, primal instinct to protect. She lunged again, searching for anything that could help. Clawing through the darkness, she stumbled upon an old mirror perched against a wall, cracked and covered with dust. Peering into it, she gasped. Instead of her reflection, she saw her children behind her, visible for just a heartbeat, pale, terrified, trapped in a world beyond reach. Their mouths moved, repeating one word again and again. Mommy. Fury ignited again in her chest. She shoved her hands against the mirror, willing it to break, to shatter. But she could feel it resisting her, testing her resolve. A desperate cry echoed, mingled with the sinister laughter of the shadows. "Don't you want to know the truth?" It was the figure again, creeping closer, inching its claws toward her throat. "What if they don't want to come back?" As panic surged within her, thoughts spiraled and twisted, a barrage of memories and darkness swirled together, a cyclone of confusion and anger. But she couldn't stop. She wouldn't stop. With one final push, she shouted, "I will find you. I'll fight for you." The attic shuddered with her vow, and shadows hissed in anger, swirling frantically around her. Whispers turned into roars, drowning her in chaos. Something was breaking, but what would come from the shards? The mirror exploded into 1,000 bright shards, and for a fleeting moment, Emily could see her children were reaching through the darkness, caught between two worlds. "Don't let go!" she screamed, stretching her hands toward them, heart pounding as the shadows clawed at her mind. What awaited her on the other side of destruction? Would she prevail against the ghosts of her past, her children's cries echoing in her ears, urging her forward, or would the darkness consume her completely? The shards of the mirror scattered across the attic floor, glinting like fallen stars amid the encroaching darkness. Each fragment reflected tortured faces, hers, filled with desperation, and her children's, marked by fear. Emily felt the shadows pulse, solidifying into a presence that wrapped around her like damp fog, oppressive and thick. "Mommy!" The voices surged, an agonizing blend of sobs and calls, echoing off the walls until the attic became a cacophony, a hellish chorus demanding her attention. Her heart raced, pounding against her ribs. She could taste the metallic tang of fear in her mouth. "I'll save you!" she shouted back to the darkness, though her voice felt small and frail against the overwhelming sound. With every breath, the air thickened, suffused with the musty scent of decay. The figure reformed in the darkness, almost fluid, shifting and contorting. It wore her children's faces like a twisted mask, a grotesque imitation that wrenched her stomach and ignited fury in various flashes of grief. "Help us!" The wails turned into shrieks as if they were caught in a whirlwind of torment, and every syllable sank deep into Emily's bones. "No!" she screamed, ripping herself from the chaotic noise, focusing instead on the faint shimmer of the doll still glowing on the floor. The whispers that followed felt like icy fingers dancing down her spine. Each fragmented piece of mirror glowed faintly, exposing a path if she could just reach it. She lunged forward, slipping on loose shards. Her hand darted out to grasp the doll, pulling it near. The warmth pulsed with an energy she didn't understand but craved fiercely. As she held the doll, she began to see clearer. The children were there, shadows in another realm, faces blurring between terror and hope. "Mom! Please!" they cried, and Emily gasped. It felt like someone was squeezing her heart. "You can't stay here," she shouted, determination flooding her. "I want to let you go." The figure shifted closer, looming large, tendrils of shadow extending toward her, hungry and eager. "You cannot save what was never yours to begin with," it declared, with a voice woven from despair and fury. "Not true." Emily fired back, gripping the doll tighter. "You think you can take them from me? I know they're out there. I'll bring them back." The presence flickered, momentarily surprised, as if her words had forged a crack in its malevolent facade. The shadows jerked, hesitated, and that flicker of freedom sparked within her a burning flame resonating with her love for her children, refusing to wane, but with every heartbeat, the darkness retaliated. It lunged, whispering promises of forgotten peace. "Come with me. It's easier. Just, give in." "No." She shook her head violently, feeling the weight of their bond anchor her to reality. "I'll never give in." In a desperate surge, she hurled the doll into the heart of the shadow. It met the figure, then exploded into a blast of light so blinding Emily stumbled back, covering her eyes. The echoes around her intensified into an unbearable roar. "Face the truth." The figure, writhing in agony, began to split, exposing ruptures of light and shadow mixing chaotically. "Mommy!" The sweet voices of her children wrapped around her, urging her forward. The attic rattled around her, walls bending and groaning as they fought against the eruption of raw emotional energy. Another quake rocked her consciousness, shattering her perception of time. Was this a breaking point or a tipping scale? Emily stepped forward into the chaos. She refused to let fear claim her. She pushed her way through the disintegrating boundary of the dimension, reaching desperately for the flickering lights, hoping, praying, that she wasn't too late. But as she crossed into that disordered vortex, a chilling realization hit her square in the chest. Not all voices were her children's. "Who will you choose?" a new voice asked, smooth and dripping with malice. For a brief instant, the world went dark, silence consumed her. The question echoed around, leaving her teetering on the edge of despair. As the void closed in, she took a breath and prepared herself. In that pulse of nothingness, were her children there? Would she find them? And more haunting, would she be willing to sacrifice part of herself to save them? The answer hung thick in the air, heavy and suffocating, just out of reach. What awaited her on the other side? Would love conquer all, or would the shadows claim yet another soul? Emily's world twisted and spasmed as she stood suspended in the void. Moments stretched unnaturally, and the silence wrapped around her, amplifying her panic. With the darkness choking her breath, the voices of her children faded to a whisper, replaced by a lingering dread that seeped into her very essence. "Who will you choose?" The malicious voice coiled around her, invasive and insistent, echoing in the blackness. 1,000 tiny pinpricks of fear lanced through her heart. The choice was suddenly clear and horrifying: save her children or lose herself to the shadows. "Choose," it repeated, the tone now condescending, as if it gloried in the torment it imposed. "They are safe here, with me." Desperation surged within her as she pictured her kids. Laughter shared at the breakfast table, tiny hands clutching hers, bedtime stories whispered in low tones. The shadows rolled and shifted, morphing into fleeting images of her past memories, alluring yet twisted in this unnatural light. "No!" she cried, forcing back memories as they threatened to overwhelm her. "I refuse to listen." In response, the voice chuckled, a sound that seared into her mind. "You think this capricious resolve will protect you? Deep down, you know you don't have what it takes to save them. Not anymore." The darkness seemed to expand, a suffocating blanket pressing tight against her chest. An agony seeped through her, the pain of acceptance or the anguish of defeat. "You can't have them!" she screamed into the void, clenching her fists as if so doing could solidify her will. she felt a sudden rippling in the void, the air hummed with an unsettling energy. A pulse, beating in sync with her racing heart. It drummed insistently, louder with every beat as the shadows shrunk back, momentarily distracted. It was a chance, a lifeline. A distant, trembling voice emerged, and it pierced through the darkness like a knife. Her children. Mommy. The cry was fraught with urgency, mingling with hope and fear, pulling her deeper into the vortex. Just hold on. She shouted, her voice a rallying cry against the tide of hopelessness. She harnessed every ounce of love she felt, channeling it into the very fabric of the void. As she pushed forward, she felt the shards of the doll burn bright in her palm and ember against the ink. Their combined warmth sparked an urgency within her, she could feel them, nearly within reach. Each flicker of light ignited forgotten memories, creating a beacon that cut through the shadows. Choose us, Mommy. The urgency in their voices sent adrenaline coursing through her veins. Yet the dark voice laughed, its timbre drenched in villainy. What a choice to make, abandon yourself or set them free, at what cost? Emily faltered for a moment, caught in the paradox between love and self-preservation. The wall began closing in around her, shadows creeping once more toward her like predators. Panic ignited within her, she had to act before the inclination for survival consumed her. Enough! She yelled, and she summoned the fire of her desperation, reaching toward the flickering lights. Words tumbled from her lips, frantic and unrestrained. I choose them. I choose my love. The darkness recoiled, shards of shadow splintering under the surge of her determination. Light poured from her, illuminating the chaos and rooting out the shadows like weeds under sunlight. The cries of her children harmonized with the radiance, wrapping around her like a lifebuoy, urging her to fight against the impending darkness, but the voice, fuming and enraged, roared back, you will regret this. With one last hurled vow, she surged through the light, dispelling the shadows around her as she called, I will never regret loving them. As the light enveloped her, the world fractured like glass, colors swirling out of control. Her feet finally struck ground, but she didn't dare open her eyes just yet. The memory of their laughter echoed, mingling with the agonized cries of the dark, leaving her breath suspended in uncertainty. Had she succeeded? Or would the shadows find a way to claw back into her? Life, instinct drove her eyes open at last. Paralyzed, she scanned the unfamiliar space around her. Was she home? The familiar scent of decay lingered still, blending disgustingly with that of burnt rubber. And then, amid the suffocating shadows, she spotted them. Two figures standing, frozen in place, silhouetted against the pale light of the attic. Two faces turned away from her. Mom. One of them whispered, a fragile tone woven with both relief and fear. The question hung in the air, painfully sweet yet horrifying. But as Emily took a step forward, she felt the air shift, heavy with unease. She opened her mouth to call them, but realized with a cold jolt that the shadows had not left completely, they lurked still, beyond the spectrum of her vision. Are they yours? The new voice returned, smoother, retaining its sinister allure. Terror coursed through her veins again. What had she brought back? What force lingered in the corners where light didn't reach? Who are you? She demanded, hardening her resolve. Behind her, another voice echoed, softer, fragile. Mommy, help us please. Were these the same children? Or had something else come with her into the light, something far worse than she could have ever imagined? Emily's heartbeat thundered in her ears, emotions tumbling like a violent storm as she faced the painful truth, not every choice led to salvation. And now, she feared it wouldn't end here. The air hung thick with dread, each breath a labor as Emily stood paralyzed before the two shadowy figures. A haze of uncertainty clouded her vision. Were they really her children? The weight of the unknown pressed down on her chest, leaving her gasping. Mommy, please. The urgency in their pleas grew more desperate. The figures twisted slowly, revealing little faces she adored but with eyes that shimmered with an unsettling glint. Something wasn't right here. Stay back. She shouted, her voice sharp, cutting through the growing sense of unease. What did I bring back? Shadows stretched around the attic, twisting and elongating, as if drawn to her vulnerability. Mommy, the voice pleaded again, softer this time, almost fragile. We're scared, yes, she knew that voice. But the timbre was wrong, tainted like the air. She took a nervous step closer, but a chill coiled around her legs, holding her in place. What if it wasn't he them? What if this was all an elaborate snare? Just show me your faces. She cried, daring the darkness to reveal its secrets. The figures shifted a flicker of movement and suddenly, their features were illuminated in a soft, eerie glow, casting a ghastly light that made her blood run cold. Their smiles, once wide and genuine, now twisted into something grotesque. Shadows clung to their edges, distorting their appearance, merging the children she remembered with whatever else had come back with her. Mommy, don't you love us? One of them asked, not just with words, but with trembling energy that rippled through the air. Emily staggered back, now certain that the familiar warmth had morphed into something else entirely. I do. I love you. She stammered, heart racing, as the room stilled ominously. But the shadows around her seemed to laugh, a soft mocking echo that played against the wall's echoes of torment. Then you will join us, forever, the sinister voice from the shadows purred, slithering into her mind, unnerving her senses. We shall be together. No more fear, only peace. Emily's heart twisted, their cries were genuine but mingled with a black-hearted chill. She turned, frantic, searching for an escape in the dim attic where light barely reached. The shadows writhed, creeping closer, whispering dark promises. No. She shouted, voice breaking. You're not my children. Mommy, the other figure said, stepping forward, their eyes gleaming with unnatural brightness. We are what you brought back. Don't you want to save us? She remembered abandoning herself to save them once. Did she just choose the darkness again? The specter of regret loomed, heavy and all-consuming, filling her thoughts with horrendous possibilities. I won't give in to you. She screamed, recoiling from them, feeling the pulse of the shadows still pushing against her, feeding off her fear, her indecision. Then let us show you what happens. The voice coiled tighter, the shadows around her swirling, whispering, and promising to reveal secrets best left uncharted. Emily could feel her resolve slipping, palpable terror wrapping around her like a vice. She stared into their luminous eyes, confused and frightened. The attic trembled, memories of warmth and laughter melding with something dark and disquieting. Please, she paused, considering the finality looming over her. What do you want from me? Join us, Mommy. And find out. Suddenly, the shadows lunged forward, engulfing her in a swirling embrace of despair. Panic clawed at her insides as the dim light flickered ominously above, heralding the encroaching darkness. Would she sink deeper into that void? Or could she still find a way back to the surface, to the light where her true children remained, untouched by the shadows? As the room spun and the hysteria suffocated her, the truth hung like a noose. Emily knew she had to choose again. But this time, the stakes felt far deadlier. The world dimmed and swirled around her as she prepared for whatever was next, heart racing, unsure where her choice, her voice would lead her. Emily's scream was swallowed by the darkness as the shadows enveloped her completely. The chilling sensation of loss swept through her like a winter wind, sharp and biting. She felt weightless, suspended in a void that snuffed out her instincts and deprived her of any sense of direction. Mommy, came the call again, reverberating around her, echoing off unseen walls. The cadence of that voice twisted her heart, tearing at the fabric of her sanity. She was slipping, drifting, and the boundaries of reality began to blur. A sudden spark ignited within her, igniting a desperate hope. I won't leave you, she cried into the suffocating dark, as if her words could somehow pull her children from the shadows. But the silence that followed was thick, oppressive like a promise of retribution. Just as fear began to claw at her throat, she was jerked back into the attic. The room pulsed with an otherworldly energy, the shadows now forming a chaotic whirlpool, threatening to tear apart the very foundation beneath her feet. Look at us, the first figure urged, its distorted smile an aberration that sent chills racing down her spine. She squinted into the inky blackness, trying to decipher what lurked there. "You can save us," the other figure pleaded. "We need you." Their faces twisted momentarily, merging with grotesque visages that made her stomach churn. Each flicker of light revealed fleeting glimpses of something monstrous hiding beneath the surface, hungry, ravenous, and waiting. "No." She shook her head violently, backing away until she collided with an old trunk, its edge biting into her back. Darkness had teeth, and she was increasingly aware of how easily they could tear her apart. "Mommy, don't you want to be with us?" One shadow whispered softly. Its voice wove a cocoon around her mind, and she could feel the seductive pull of what it offered, a life devoid of pain, where love reigned undiluted. The temptation was intoxicating, a siren call to join undying warmth, but what would she leave behind? The memories flickered through her mind like shattered glass. The joy and laughter turned to ashes in her mouth. The true essence of her children submerged beneath the facade. "You aren't them," she shouted, her voice raw. It's okay," the shadows hissed, their voices coiling tightly around her thoughts. "You'll see. Just let go." Panic surged, powerful and unrelenting. She turned, searching for an exit, a crack in their terrifying embrace. Her eyes darted wildly until they landed on something, a flicker of light growing brighter at the far corner of the attic. The way out. With adrenaline surging through her veins, she lunged towards it, pushing through the swirling shadows that clawed at her. She could feel their icy fingers tugging at her clothes, striving to pull her back down into their depths. "Mommy, don't leave us!" The echoes cried, their voices layered in agonizing harmony, weaving a contradictory melody of love and despair. She stumbled but pressed on, her breath coming in harsh gasps. As she neared the glimmer, a sharp pain struck her shoulder, a shadow had latched on, biting deep. The fear was a choking grip, yet she forced herself to shove through the pain, driven by sheer will. "Let me go!" Emily screamed, fury igniting in her chest. "I want to be yours." Suddenly, the light flickered, blinding and intense, flooding her vision like a sunrise. Just before she reached it, she felt the darkness around her recoil, a terrible wail echoing behind her as if the shadows realized it was losing its grip. With a final heave, Emily shoved free from their grasp and tumbled into the light, but she didn't land on the attic floor. Instead, she fell through the void, landing hard, her body slumping against cold tiles. She blinked, dazed and disoriented, until the world returned to focus. She wasn't home. This wasn't her safe haven. The sterile metallic smell of blood hung in the air and flickering lights buzzed overhead, revealing walls marred by scrawls of insanity. Where was she? An abandoned facility? The realization hit her like a thunderclap. Had she escaped the shadows only to tumble into something much worse? A figure approached in the distance, lurking within the murky shadows of the hallway. It stepped forward, gradually revealing a familiar silhouette. Her breath hitched. "Mommy," the voice called out again, but this time it wasn't just a whisper. Emily's heart raced, feeling a chilling wave wash through her. Could it really be them? Or were the shadows trailing closer, thirsting for her surrender once more? She took a step back, instinctively recoiling, as dread twisted her insides. The real terror was only beginning. Emily stumbled forward, her pulse racing as the figure drew closer, its silhouette cutting through the dim, flickering light overhead. It was her daughter, or at least the likeness of her. The familiar features twisted slightly, an unsettling echo of the face she adored. Emily's mind reeled. Was this an illusion of the nightmares she had just escaped, or was it real? "Mommy," the voice called again, tinged with familiarity that tightened her throat. She fought the urge to run, muscles tensing. "Help us, where are you?" she demanded, urgency flooding her voice. "Where are you and your brother?" A sense of dread coiled inside her as shadows danced hungrily just beyond the reach of the light. "We're here, Mommy." "We're scared," the figure said, stepping further into the light. The resemblance was undeniable, down to the tiny cherry red dress she once tucked her daughter into. But those eyes, they shimmered unnaturally, dark pools gleaming with something sinister. "No," she whispered, shaking her head frantically. "You're not my children." The fear clawed at her chest, filling her with a swirling sense of dread. Memories flashed through her mind, playing tag in the backyard, giggling fits in the living room, bedtime stories whispered under the warm glow of a nightlight. Would she risk losing them all over again? "Mommy!" the figure implored, but the shadows behind her flickered ominously, shifting like smoke seeking revenge. "We only want to go home." The word twisted inside her, filling her with warmth and sorrow at once. Home had been a place of comfort, laughter, and now terror. She searched her heart, desperate to hear her children's genuine voices above the darkness. "Stay away from me!" she shouted, feeling a wild surge of protective rage. "Whatever you are, you can't have me." And with that vow, she turned. The nothingness of the facility shifted again. Flickers of memories gnawed at her soul, but she shook them off, focusing on the pulse of love still tangled within her. She needed to escape this twisted reality, whatever it was. "Mom, don't go!" the figure cried, an eerie mimicry of all the pleas she'd heard before. "You chose the darkness." "No," she screamed, elation and grief intertwining in her chest. "I chose to fight for you." With a surge of adrenaline, she sprinted down the narrow corridor, her breath quickening as shadows clawed at her heels, desperate for their prize. Lights overhead flickered urgently, illuminating various rooms that opened as she dashed by. Each door revealed fleeting glimpses of lost souls, twisted figures begging for release, lost forever in the shadow's embrace. Emily pressed on, determination channeling her fear into singular resolve. Each step pounded like a heartbeat, reminding her of the children she loved. Suddenly, she rounded a corner and fell into a large room filled with echoes of screams and faceless shadows. Desperation clawed at her, but she searched the darkness, calling out, "Kids! Where are you? Mommy!" A chorus of familiar voices pierced through the chaos, and her heart soared with hope. They were near. The shadows began to coil closer, but she wouldn't let them drown out her children. With steely resolve, she lunged toward the shadows, determined to pull her children from their clutches once and for all. Gripping the locket she had rescued earlier, she held it aloft like a beacon, feeling a warm pulse grow stronger in her fingers. The shadows recoiled, shrieking tightly, their voices merging into a cacophony of despair. "Let them go!" she screamed, the words erupting from her very core. A wave of light poured from the locket, illuminating the room, casting away the darkness like an invading army. The shadows hissed, peeling back into the corners, revealing her twins standing unscathed, their eyes wide with hope. "Mommy!" they cried, racing toward her. She dropped to her knees, wrapping her arms around them tightly, breathless with relief as they clung to her. "Are you all right?" she whispered, tears spilling over as she cradled them. "I'm here. I won't let anything take you again." The children nodded, pressing close against her, warmth radiating through her. She could feel the darkness clawing at the edges of her consciousness, but it was fading. She squeezed them closer, a mantra thrumming through her, "Love conquers all." As the light surged brighter, breaking through the shadows, Emily realized what she must do next. She had to banish the darkness for good. Together, she whispered feverishly, "We will break every bond it has on us." With that, the three huddled close, their fingers interlocked, their memories intertwined, fueling strength from love. Emily lifted her head toward the trembling darkness that continued to swirl menacingly. "Enough!" she yelled, voice rising defiantly, "We're done hiding." And as if the universe responded, bolts of light erupted from their huddle, a radiant explosion of warmth that shattered the oppressive fog. The howl of the shadows morphed into an anguished screech, as Emily and her children leaned into the brilliance together, pushing back, reclaiming their lives. The darkness dissipated like smoke blown away by a gale, revealing a clear sky and the familiar embrace of their home. When the morning sun broke through, they found themselves on the living room floor, wrapped in blankets, sunlight illuminating their faces. They were safe. The house felt different now, lighter, healed. "Mommy?" her daughter asked, rubbing her eyes. "Yes, my love. I had a scary dream." Emily smiled through her tears, embracing them again, warmth filling the gaps of nighttime fear. "So did I," she admitted. "But it's over now. We're together, and we're going to be okay." They huddled, safe in each other's warmth, sharing quiet breaths as the stories of shadows began to fade, replaced by the reality of love. And as the sun illuminated the room, sparking joy in their hearts, Emily whispered a final promise into the bright morning light: "There's nothing to fear now." You need to subscribe now so you don't miss the next exclusive stories that will thrill you beyond belief. Smash that like button now to feed the algorithm, and let us boost this channel together. Flood the comments section with your reactions and theories about this haunting conclusion. What do you think happened to Emily and her children? And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this wild ride. Your support makes all the difference. Show your love for the channel.